if you saw last week's black and white photo, well, it wasn't black and white because it was just dark. But if you saw last week's photo, you probably can see that like this is almost a version 2.0 or an extension of last week's photo. And one of the reasons I shot this is because last week's was so monochromatic. It wasn't actually black and white. The room was dark, and I had the light from the lights, and it was almost like, I don't know, it looked like a black and white photo, but it was full color. There just wasn't a lot of colors. And so after I took last week's photo, I thought, well, I wonder what I can do to kind of change it up a little bit and use the same kind of broad strokes, but maybe in a more different or interesting way and add some color. And so that's what I did here. This is completely real, 100% in camera. This is not artificial. There's no effects or photoshopping or anything like that. Well, okay, I did use the spot healing tool in Lightroom to remove some dust, like just tiny little specks of dust. But everything here is exactly as it was in camera. There's nothing artificial about the image. And to kind of explain how I did this, it helps to go and look at last week's photo and see the behind the scenes, where you can see there's 5 colored lights. Well, in this shot, they're colored, but in the original from last week, they're not. They're just white lights. But I have these arrayed in a kind of a star pattern above this little glass ball that is sitting on an old dry erase whiteboard on our living room floor. It's a little weird to explain, so it's probably the third time I said this. Go back and look at last week's photo for the behind the scenes shot to get an idea of what you're looking at here. The difference is, for this one, I had all the lights adjusted as different colors. And I did that because I wanted to try something new and different, but I also wanted to see what would happen if I photographed this from a different angle. So those 2 variables changed here. Number 1, the lights are different colors. Number 2, this is at a different angle. Instead of being shot straight from the top down through the center of that star frame contraption, this is shot off to the side. And I took many photos from a lot of different angles to see what would happen. I ended up with this one as my favorite because you have those 5 clear bars of color isolated in that darker portion of the glass ball, but then you have all of the colors kind of smeared and blurred around the edges. It almost looks like motion blur, maybe even artificial motion blur, especially in that green one on the top left, but I promise you it's not. This is exactly how it was in camera as I shot it. And if you go to Flickr, you can see the high resolution original and download it and examine it. Like, I promise you, this is all real. I shot this at f8 using my macro lens so I could get nice and close or far or whatever distance I wanted. I don't even think I cropped this, like maybe just a tiny bit. But I really try to compose this as you see it here. 1/250th of a second just to get as little motion blur as possible. This was ISO 1000, which, back in the day, like 10 years ago, that would have been crazy high, but it's really not. Any camera today can shoot ISO 1000. Even like the camera I shot this with, my full frame D750, can shoot ISO 1000, no problem at all. So exposure isn't really that important here, except to say that the one question mark was depth of field. Like, what aperture do I use to shoot this so that I get the right things in focus and the right things out of focus? And I ended up at f8. I think there's probably a lot of different apertures I could have used. So that's kind of this photo in a nutshell. I don't know what I'm going to do from here. Like, I'm not sure where else I'm going to try taking photos of this glass ball. It's been fun to play around with this. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of ideas. So we'll just have to see what happens next. But it's really been fun to take this photo and last week's photo with the glass ball and these lights.